The following conversations are taken from our channel membership exclusive weekly live show that we do on Saturdays from 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time called Members Talk Live. Find out how you can become a member and appear on the show. All of the information is down in the description below, as well as all of the links to the channels of today's guests. Check them out, and I hope to talk with you very soon.
You're probably thinking, this was a superhero movie, but that guy in the suit just turned that other guy into a kebab. Surprise, this is a different kind of superhero story. Hear the music.
Smirk with the mouth. I can't die 1 foot in the grave, but I'm still alive. Try to kill me, I'll just revive. Then I'll put another bullet right between your eyes.
You may be wondering why the red suit. Well, that's so bad guys can't see me bleed. This guy's got the right idea. He wore the brown pants.
My gun's all big like Texas. Hey goons, thugs, and bosses. Guess what? I brought Colossus. Time's up, better count your losses. Kicking that ass as my girlfriend watches. Run away, you know that I'll chase every bad guy, put them right in their place. Revenge, I'm gonna give you a taste. I'm sexy as hell, but I cover my fate.
I do this the old-fashioned way. With 2 swords and maximum effort.
The crazy ass cards y'all looking to do, so click, click, boom.
Welcome, everybody, to the Deadpool rewatch review on the members. We've got Ryan, we've got Michael, T, and we've got Ace. I mean, Deadpool, guys. Deadpool is on everyone's mind recently because obviously there's no mystery as to why we're doing this. Deadpool and Wolverine is, what is it at this point, like 20 days away?
Yeah,
it's the 6th today. It is of the recording. It is 20 days away from being injected into our eyeballs. So we are very Deadpool crazy over here. We're very much looking forward to this movie. So we are going to be going through the Deadpool movies. Deadpool today, and next week we'll be going through Deadpool 2. So before we kick off our talk about Deadpool, I'm just going to remind the people, maybe you haven't watched it in a little bit, what the plot of Deadpool was. Wade Wilson is an ex-Special Forces agent turned mercenary. Eventually, he got tired of killing for hire and ended up taking jobs, pitting him against bad guys like pizza delivery stalkers. He even seems to be settling down in his personal life as he enters a long-term relationship with Vanessa, a former prostitute as sex-crazy as Wade is, which we see very clearly through a very, very crazy montage. But their happiness is put at risk when Wade is diagnosed with late-stage cancer. Wanting to get healthy for Vanessa, Wade agrees to take part in an experimental procedure to make him a superhero, and those procedures are overseen by AJAX, an evil arms dealer who injects Wade with a formula that, when mixed with adrenaline, should activate any mutant DNA if Wade should have any. After a series of torturous events, it works, but the results make Wade have the complexion akin to Freddy Krueger. More, it is revealed AJAX is not creating superheroes, but adding control chips that turn these people into super slaves and for sale for the highest bidder. After a fight with AJAX, Wade is able to escape, but seeks out the boss on the belief that AJAX can fix his face. He remains in hiding, afraid to show himself to Vanessa, and goes on a killing spree of AJAX's men, now in a new red suit and under the name Deadpool. Eventually, he finds AJAX after a shootout on a bridge, but is stopped by the X-Men's Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead, who allow AJAX to escape. In an attempt to stop Wade, AJAX kidnaps Vanessa and takes her to what appears to be an aircraft carrier of AJAX of some kind. It's kind of unclear as to where this final battle takes place. After a big fight breaks out, Deadpool has AJAX at gunpoint. Despite Colossus' attempt at inspiring Deadpool to be a hero, Deadpool blows AJAX's head off. Reunited with Vanessa, Wade reveals his new look to her, and she accepts Wade and his face as one she'd be happy to sit on. As our credits roll. So that is Deadpool. This movie came out February 14th, 2016. It had a budget of $50 million. The opening weekend was $132 million. Domestically, it went on to do $363 million, and worldwide, it did $782 million. So I want to start off right now with you guys kind of going back in your minds to 2016. What do you remember about Deadpool, the release, when it was coming out? Had you heard about the character before, or was this brand new information to you when the trailer dropped?
Definitely familiar with the character. Was in a lot of comic group chats where Deadpool fans were, clamoring for this for a long time. Ryan Reynolds was made for this role. He wanted this to get done for the longest. So when I found out that they were making this, I was excited to see this, especially it being rated R. the stuff that they can do with his character, the fourth wall breaking abilities, I just couldn't wait to see how it and even to see if it translated well on the big screen, and it absolutely did. I remember this movie just totally blowing me away, and it was definitely one of the best Fox movies, dare I say, at the time. One of the best comic movies that we saw, definitely easily digestible, and it was just a movie that we definitely needed for the time, and I think it set the tone for a lot of other comic movies.
So prior to Deadpool coming out, there was like a clip going around the internet of like that initial scene. Like, and I don't know if this is a Mandela effect thing, but I remember seeing
the test footage.
The test footage, the
Yeah.
infamous leaked test footage that made this movie a reality.
So the studio granted us a small amount of money to make test footage. This test footage that we shot then sat on the shelf for 4 years, as it does. They didn't do anything with it. And then about just a little under 2 years ago, it leaked accidentally onto the internet.
Oh, hello there. I bet you're wondering why the red suit. Well, that's so bad guys can't see me bleed.
There's 4 of us. There's me, Rhett, Reese, Paul Wernick, and Tim Miller, the director. One of us did it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know who did it. Yeah.
We all sort of said at the beginning, someone should leak it. Someone should leak it. So the idea was planted, but I'm 70% sure it wasn't me.
Yes. So I remember seeing that, and I know about Deadpool previous to that. Like, I'm not a huge comic book reader anymore, but you know the character, you know the suit, like you get it, and like all of the different video games, he would pop up in some of the different Marvel games back in the day. So I wasn't super excited about the movie. Once I saw the test footage, I just immediately thought they wouldn't do it because it was too edgy. Like, I was like, you know, they're not going to do this super edgy because, as we were talking about earlier, we're coming off of Daredevil, we're coming off of Elektra, we're coming off of all of these very soft, you know, movies. And of course, the infamous Wolverine Origins, right? That was, it was a movie that was made. So I was cautiously optimistic because, of course, we had the Green Lantern. Like, Ryan Reynolds' track record with me is very hit or miss. Like, you know, if he's not in a romantic comedy, it's very miss when it comes to him doing, you know, serious action stuff up until that point, right? Like, you know, you have Van Wilder and stuff like that he did. So he wasn't a proven commodity because he did Green Lantern. And he did Wolverine Origins. Like, those were 2 hard misses. So, you know, I was cautiously optimistic and pleasantly surprised when it came out, and it kept the tone of that teaser. It kept the tone of what you wanted an action superhero movie to be.
So I was always a big Deadpool fan growing up as a kid. Though I wasn't allowed to read most of the comics. Like, my parents didn't really have a problem with me, like, with some violent stuff. But every now and then, like, if it got too extreme, then they'd be like, okay, like, you can't be watching that, you can't be reading stuff like that. But I was always a big Deadpool fan, and I remember being very excited in 2009. It was my best friend Tinley, rest in peace, by the way. We actually went to go see X-Men Origins Wolverine at one of the last drive-ins in Glendale, Arizona, and we watched X-Men Origins Wolverine. And of course, I was a kid, so I loved it until I looked back at it and went, I mean, T kind of just put it perfectly. It is a movie with characters and lines. But I remember, like, and then I remember hearing about, like, there was talks about a Deadpool movie coming out. And, you know, Ryan Reynolds was coming back to do it. And at first, you know, I was hesitant. I mean, Ryan Reynolds was always a guy that just mostly did comedies. But I mean, if you watch movies that he's done, like the movie Buried, where like he's in a coffin and he's buried underground.
Love that movie.
Great movie. Like that movie really does show he does have an acting ability, because Deadpool is a character that is very self-aware, but the movies are also, his character is also not afraid to get like actually serious. So I thought Ryan Reynolds was a perfect choice. Saw the teaser, got so excited, saw it in theaters, loved it, went to go see it like a month after with my friend. We were too young to go see it, so we bought tickets to Force Awakens and then snuck right into Deadpool. Loved it, and I've loved it ever since. It's probably maybe in my top 5 favorite comic book films of all time.
I guess most of my exposure, I'd say, was through the Lego Marvel Superheroes game with PG Deadpool, who's actually pretty funny, and that he is, like, again, minus the F-bombs and sexual references. He is actually pretty fun. I think I might have seen, Let's Play and game footage of like the Deadpool video game, but otherwise my exposure to the character was relatively minimal outside of the X-Men movie we do not speak of. As for my thoughts on how the movie would turn out, I was like, because it was, the release date was February. And
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, like T said, Ryan Reynolds, he's good in rom-coms. And I mean, again, things have changed a little bit now, but February, at least, is still kind of a dump month where studios are like, we put some money in it, but it's too expensive for January, so put it in February.
Yeah, true.
And just hope it makes something of a profit. I mean, it's how we got 50 Shades of Grey. It's like,
Madam Web was February.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
So it might be a goat month for movies then if Madam Web was in there. So.
Or Dakota Johnson.
But
oh wow, she had 2 February movies.
Yeah.
Oof, that's gotta hurt.
That's her month.
Yeah.
She owns it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess so. Overall, I was like, I liked the trailer footage, but I was worried. I was like, yeah, the trailer looks good, but like, I don't know. But then Deadpool came out. I was like, oh, okay, good trailer, good movie. Yay!
My introduction to Deadpool was X-Men Wolverine Origins.
Oh,
and
not a good start.
I didn't know anything about the character. So I was just like, oh, okay, this Deadpool is kind of weird, but I guess that's Deadpool. And then I met people who knew more than me, and they were like, that was not Deadpool. That was not Deadpool. And I was just like, whoa, okay, you're really mad about this, so I guess they really screwed up this character. But my introduction to Ryan Reynolds was actually Green Lantern. So that was the first movie I ever saw Ryan Reynolds in. So it's kind of funny how those kind of are in a weird way connected to each other, and we see that a lot in this movie as well that we'll get into. But as far as like the Deadpool release, I just remember people were crazy about it. The marketing was everywhere, and I was into the marketing. The marketing was a lot of fun. Ryan Reynolds absolutely killed it with how he was able to just kind of put this character everywhere and get it into the zeitgeist before the movie even came out.
Oh, hello, Deadpool here. I always wanted to be a professional athlete because I wanted to have children in cities all over the world.
I did miss this one in theaters though, because it was rated R, and I was not a rated R age yet when this came out. And I was close, but I wasn't there yet. And I was going to see this movie with a girl that I liked, and my bus was late trying to get up to the theater and everything. That she's like, my dad said we had to go, so we just went in. And so I couldn't get into the theater because I was too young.
Cut this part out so the wifey doesn't hear this part.
Oh, she knows the story. She knows the story. She knows the story. No, but like, so Deadpool kind of passed me by. I think I watched this for the first time when it came out I think it was on Netflix when it came out for its release. And so I didn't see it in theaters. I kind of missed all the craze, and I just watched it as it was. And before we kind of get into the thoughts on that way, I want to hear, when was the last time you guys watched Deadpool before this rewatch? Because I probably hadn't seen this movie since like 2018, before Deadpool 2 was coming out. So this was like my first time watching it in quite a few years. So Michael, when was the last time you watched Deadpool before this rewatch?
I think the last time might have been maybe a couple months ago. Deadpool is one of those everybody has like that one movie where like they don't mind just having in the background playing, but they can like visualize everything that's going on in the movie, even if you're not paying attention. So I think that might have been like maybe a couple months ago. I just saw it on my Amazon, and I was like, I'm gonna play it, and I played it while my son was playing. So yeah, about 2 months ago.
I honestly can't remember. I mean, I know it's kind of funny. I always seem to watch it with my dad, and I don't know. I guess it maybe a year at least since I last watched it. But yeah, I guess it's been a while for me.
Yeah, for me, it's been within this year, 2024. I kind of just like same thing like Michael said, decided, the shows are kind of slowing down. I need to watch something, but with Deadpool is one of those movies that it's easily digestible, so you can kind of put it on in the background and pick up right where wherever you're at. And so Deadpool was probably about this 2024. I probably did rewatch both of them.
I think the last time I watched Deadpool 1 was probably right before 2 came out. I know I haven't watched it in a while. I was surprised that I owned it on Apple TV or whatever. So I bought it, and I know I watched it when I bought it around the time 2 came out.
You're probably thinking this was a superhero movie, but that guy in the suit just turned that other guy into a kebab. Surprise! This is a different kind of superhero story.
Let's just get into this rewatch, guys. So I watched Deadpool, like I said, first time in a couple of years on Wednesday, so just a couple of days ago. And the first thing that stuck out to me is that it does very much feel like a movie in a place in a certain time. It came out during that big boom of Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like the Marvel Cinematic Universe was really starting to take off. We were going to get, Civil War. Like Phase 3 was starting when Deadpool was coming out. And Phase 3 was like when the MCU was just this juggernaut of a thing. You also had the DCEU trying to kick in. We had Batman v Superman coming out then the same year. So when I watched Deadpool, it does feel very much like an outlier. It feels like someone going against the system. There's a lot of talk in here about how he's not a superhero. He doesn't want to be a superhero, and how this movie really isn't a superhero movie. It's got a superhero in it. It's got those aspects, but it really is. They didn't lie in the marketing. It really is a romance movie. It really is a love story going on with Deadpool and Vanessa. And another thing that stuck out to me about this movie when I watched it was it is definitely of a time and place, because it starts off with a Mama June joke. I don't know if you guys caught that, but when Deadpool, he says something about like Mama June juice or something like that.
Mama June after hot yoga.
There it is. Yeah. Yes, Mama June after hot yoga when he's talking to Dopinder in the cab. I was like, Mama June. Oh wow, this is like of a time, because I haven't heard Mama June.
Sir, what does Mama June smell like, Mr. Poole? I love his reaction. I love his reaction.
I barely remember that, and I don't know. The sentence still makes me laugh. I don't know, just the way it flows. I mean, for me, it's like seeing the Adventure Time watch. I was like, oh, okay, so that's when this movie came out.
Exactly. I was like, Adventure Time. I haven't thought about that since like middle school. Like all these little things that kind of stuck out to me. But another thing that stuck out to me was like, it is of a time and place. It's almost like a time capsule for what the superhero genre, what the superhero culture was back then. But it also still, like Michael was saying, it does hold up today. Like it's got those pop culture references. It's got those references to what superhero movies were doing at the time. But it also stands on its own because it's a pretty solid story. I think they do a really great job of getting us sympathetic to Wade. Because when he first is introduced and he's like, threatening the pizza guy for being a stalker, there's a way that this character could have gone where he could have been really unlikable. But by giving him cancer, by giving him that relationship with Vanessa, it really does endear you to him. And Ryan Reynolds actually gets some pretty good performances in here when he has to get the cancer diagnosis and when he's dealing with the thought of losing Vanessa. He sucks me in with his performance. I think he does a really good job there.
I'm right there with you as far as it's a great movie that really stands alone. Like to your point of you making like 2016, a lot of good comic movies came out, like Civil War, Doctor Strange was coming out.
Yep.
Batman vs Superman, even Suicide Squad got a lot of attention and stuff like that. But Deadpool was one of those movies that definitely held its own, and the jokes were there. You know, obviously due to Ryan Reynolds, the action sequences, it told a very simple story that, like I said, is very easily digestible. The fourth wall breaking was something that we never really got to see, you know what I'm saying, from these comic movies. And it was just such a good way to add on to this character. And just his ability to be over the top. Like if you go back and watch this movie, some of the kills are like very, very graphic on top of that they pan away. There's two that stand out. The one where he like cuts the guy's head off and kicks it like a soccer ball. But then there's another one.
I love that though.
That's a good one.
It's so creative.
My favorite Deadpool kill though is where he's making fun of the guy that looks like Jared from Subway. And he has the two henchmen, and you can kind of see that he stabs them and then stands on the sword and splits them in half. And it's just, we couldn't get that before because like I think it was T that said it earlier. These other movies are PG-13. You couldn't go there. So when Deadpool came out, you knew it was going to be all the gore, all the violence, all the, you know, profanity. You know, that sex scene was kind of like out of nowhere. No one kind of expected that. But that's a little montage that added onto it. But the whole thing was just great followed by one of the best Stan Lee cameos. You know, like that's definitely one of the best Stan Lee
You
cameos.
can't buy love, but you can rent it.
Who would have thought you see
For
Stan
3
Lee?
minutes.
Who would have thought you see Stan Lee in a strip club? But no, this movie definitely stands on its own in an era, like Zach was saying, where superhero movies were really at the prime. Like where superhero fatigue wasn't a thing, but it just added onto it and just made the whole genre that much better.
The first thing that stood out, I didn't know Vanessa was a sex worker. Like that, I don't know why. Like when she was talking to her, I was like, okay, I didn't see.
Didn't remember that.
I don't remember that at all.
Well, did
like
they cut
what
that out? Were you watching that in a different
that's
country?
true.
Oh yeah.
I honestly don't remember where I saw Deadpool. I get my years mixed up. Years kind of blurs to me because I spent a lot of years overseas. So it is a possibility that I might have saw it overseas.
Well, the way she's
Sometimes I
introduced too, because she gets introduced in that mercenary bar. You could have thought she was a waitress. Like it very easily could have just you could have just
Could have
thought she
been
was a waitress.
anything.
So,
But
so
it-
did you not get the balls and holes reference in that one?
Oh no, I got all of the other references. I just don't remember. Like, there's a lot about this movie. I didn't remember Gina Carano was in this movie. Like, there was a lot of things.
That's a
that I
little
did not
surprising to me too. I
remember.
was like, oh wow, and she looks young too. Like I'm used to seeing her how she is now, but she looked really young in this, even though it's only like, well, I guess it's almost a decade ago. 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Ah,
Crazy.
no.
Makes you feel old.
It was a lot of things that just kind of struck me as I was rewatching it. TJ Miller, missed opportunity. Just one of those things. Like, he was great in this movie. But yeah, it was like, I didn't remember, of course, the montage. Like, I don't remember. I do remember parts of it because I knew the whole.
International Women's Day.
Yes. I knew that.
It's hard to forget that one.
Yeah.
My favorite was Lent, where they're just sitting around. I was like, oh, okay, all right.
The Lent joke got me too. I thought that was actually the funniest part of the montage.
The Happy Halloween got me when he had the vampire teeth in.
Oh,
Just like, oh god.
Great montage, by the way. I didn't remember how great their relationship, like how that really solidified them. Like, it just showed it showed why he was fighting for it. Because I mean, I would fight for Morena Baccarin too. But like, they had a really good dynamic. Like, that was the one thing that I didn't remember. Like, you remember the action, you remember AJAX, but I didn't remember how good of a connection those two had. And I rewatched it and I was like, man, these two have really good chemistry. I think it worked really well in this movie. Because once again, Ryan Reynolds is great in rom-coms. Like, I feel like he has chemistry with almost all of his co-stars, male or female. Like, he just has a really good kinetic energy that bounces off other people. But those two had a really great chemistry that I thought that really stuck out in this movie to me.
This is kind of a weird thing to point out, but for me, one thing that kind of stuck out this time around was kind of the lighting. Like, just in terms of how both the flashback scenes and the present day scenes were all shot, because the flashback scenes, they're all kind of dark and dingy. Like, it's arcades, bars, skate parks. It
feels like an indie movie.
Yeah, kind of almost. And meanwhile, the present day scenes, they're all evenly lit, and I kind of cheap looking. That, again, that might be part of the joke. Like, yeah, we were an R-rated superhero movie. There's no way we were going to get a $3 million budget. But again, it kind of works. I love especially the harsh angles, especially in the bar when Wade first meets Agent Smith. I don't remember his actual name.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, just the shadows, especially on Reynolds, where he's like, you're less like you're more like Shake Weight. It just, again, just
you're looking at Mr. Glasses infomercial, but not a fun one.
Yeah,
like more shake weighty,
more shaky weighty.
Yeah. But that also goes to Zach's point, as far as there's a lot of dated references in that you kind of had to be in the time to really understand.
Yeah, and I guess it just kind of makes me feel bad that Tim Miller seems like kind of hard to work with, because, again, at the very least, he knows how to light a scene. And I guess same goes for TJ Miller. Again, he let's just say I don't feel bad that he's no longer in mainstream entertainment, but that being said, he's good. Again, I know there was some on-set tension between him and Reynolds, but TJ Miller was good. I mean, his jokes about Wade's messed up face are Again, there's a reason they put it in the trailer. Even the PG-13 versions of his insults were hilarious.
Oh, God, you are hard to look at. You look like the topographical map of Utah.
I think TJ Miller in this is fine. I honestly was kind of I kind of forgot about him. Like, I know he's in this one and Deadpool 2, but I guess like so much promotion for Deadpool and Wolverine that I haven't seen him in a little bit, and I kind of forgot that he was a part of this franchise. And I never really found his stuff all that hilarious to me. I never really found his character that necessary. Like, I think it's good to show Wade's friendship with him, but when he disappears, like when he's just like leaves this movie randomly and he doesn't show up for the third act, like he's just gone. What does he say? He says, I'd help you out, but I don't want to. And then he's just kind of gone for the rest of the movie. Like, I don't really miss him. I don't really wonder where he went. So that's a little bit. I'm hearing you guys seem to like TJ Miller's performance in this, or at least it seemed to stick out more to you guys than it did to me. I feel like I wouldn't miss him if he wasn't here.
I liked it. I thought it was solid. They had good banter, and you could tell it was a lot of improv. I think the funniest line for me from him was like when they're walking to the strip club. He's like, "I'm like angry and afraid." He's like, "Is there a word for that?" He's like, "A frangry." You know what I'm saying? Like little things like that. Like the little one-liners is what got me, where he's just like, "Have fun watching your midnight showing of Blade 2," where it's just like that's all he was there for. I can imagine though that, like Ryan was saying, there was some tension on scene. I can imagine them having a lot of fun on scene together. Two actors that could improv and just throw a whole bunch of stuff off script at each other. That'd be a good atmosphere.
Yeah, but that line that you just mentioned is where my brain, it sometimes works overtime, because I was like, okay, he just mentioned Blade 2, Deadpool's now in the MCU, Blade exists in the MCU, so Blade 2, and I just started going in my mind of like, how does it work? And I kind of short circuited.
But then Ryan Reynolds was in Blade Trinity.
Exactly.
What I love about this movie specifically is two things. One, the dark humor, specifically that one scene where Vanessa and Wade are trying to outdo each other by saying our lives are worse. Like, oh, my uncle molested me. Uncles, they took turns, and it's like such disturbing dialogue, but the delivery that they do with it makes it funny, even though what they're saying is horrible. But I just love the dark humor. I love the risks they take. And I also love Ryan Reynolds' delivery for everything, because if anybody else were to say some of these lines that Ryan Reynolds says, they're not funny. But since Ryan Reynolds is such a charming guy, and he just has that voice that like he could say something that's not funny, but make it funny. Like, okay, like that one scene that to this day I still don't really get, but I laugh all the time. It's where the guy in the apartment's trying to talk, and he's like, "I will shoot your effing cat." He's like, I don't know what that means. I don't have a cat. Then who's kitty litter that I just crap in? He's like,
that one always gets me too. I'm just like, it's supposed to be funny, so it's like you're supposed to laugh, but it doesn't make sense.
It's hilarious.
Like, what?
That's hilarious.
And then there's another great. And then TJ Miller. You know, I like TJ Miller. I first got introduced to TJ Miller from Cloverfield. You know, he was the guy with the camera and everything. I always thought TJ Miller was funny. There's one scene in this movie. It's not even really a laugh out loud scene, but it makes me laugh so hard. It's where Wade Wilson comes to the bar. He's like, "Wade Wilson, what can I get you?" He's like, "I'd like a BJ." "Oh, me too." No, the drink. He's like, "Okay, here you go. Whipped cream. I give you a BJ." Wade, why do you make me make that? It's like, it's not even really a laugh out loud scene, but I love the dark, very just raunchy humor. Like, I like the fact that in Deadpool, they're not just saying raunchy things just to like get people shot. It's not like in the 2000s where every single teen movie we're just trying to think of something really raunchy and disgusting to say. The jokes in these movies, they work. Even like jokes that you think wouldn't work, they work because of Ryan Reynolds' delivery. He makes it funny, and Ryan Reynolds is such a charming actor. Which, you know, like what whoever said it earlier, like you feel sympathy for Wade, because if anybody else had played Wade, he would have been such a dislikable character. Like nobody would have liked him. But since Ryan Reynolds has like this automatic charm to his personality in real life, it makes him so likable, even though he is kind of an a-hole.
Oh yeah, absolutely, he is an a-hole, no doubt about it. But another thing about this movie that I went through the plot in a linear fashion. But I love that this movie does not go through its plot in a linear fashion, because I think this movie, like, you can laugh when you say, but I think this is kind of like one of those masterclass showings of how editing can really change a movie. Because this movie is completely different if you do introduction to Wade, meeting Vanessa, getting cancer, and then the whole mutation bit, and then Deadpool, and then leading to the third act, right? Because we're waiting for at least an hour before Deadpool pops up if you do it that way. But this movie is really smart in the way that it starts with Deadpool in the cab with Dopinder playing with the window. Like, you get the tone immediately of like, okay, this guy doesn't take anything seriously, and this movie's not going to be that serious. We're just going to have a lot of fun with this. You go into that. I honestly love the bridge sequence that this movie starts off with. I think
fantastic.
This bridge sequence is a little bit underrated, because when you talk about the best, action sequences in superhero movies, this is such a fun one where he's only got 12 bullets. Let's count them down, and all right, fine, you guys are gonna have to share. Like, it's just, there's some
He wore the brown pants.
He wore the brown pants. Like, there's some great humor. The action is so solid. It's so much fun to watch. That one shot where he does that flip in the air and shoots through 3 guys' heads in one, like, there's some really epic moments in this, and it kicks the movie off on such an adrenaline rush. And then you get the flashbacks into how he got to the bridge, which also goes to how this movie had a smaller budget and was such an underdog, because it is a pretty, you can feel it. It's a small movie. It's like the bridge, and then you've got the mutation lab, which isn't like that explored. It's very much just kind of like corners of this dingy looking basement, and then you've got Al's house, and then until that like third act battle at the end, you don't really have very many, and you have the bar, obviously the mercenary bar, but you don't really have too many big set pieces or like environments that they go to. They stick to very the same ones over and over, and I like that, though. I like that this movie feels contained. It also goes back to how the superhero movies back in 2016, they were just so big and save the world and big budgets and this and that. This is just such a smaller, more intimate story, and it really works to its advantage.
What I loved was the scene where he knocked on Professor X's door, and it's like just the door, and it's like you don't see any. It's like the stock footage of the house, and then he just knocks on the front door, and it's like
exactly.
It's just Cyclops here, because we don't have obviously we don't have the budget for any other X-Men.
It's a big house. It's funny that I only ever see 2 of you. It's almost like the studio couldn't afford another X-Men.
Yeah, Rip Lee from Alien 3.
Yes.
He's like,
after all.
But to Zach's point, that bridge scene was really well done. To add on to that, I even like how in the intro, everything was like still frame, and they're going by it, giving all the, the cast, the directors in a very humorous way, how they're insulting themselves and stuff like that. And then to see it manifest on the real action sequences and them slow it up on that joke where it's like, did I forget to turn the stove off? People cheered at that point because they set up it perfectly. So I agree to Zach's point. The movie, the whole setup was amazing.
I'm about to do to you what Limp Bizkit did to music in the late 90s. Dad?
And of course, on that bridge sequence, we also get introduced to how this movie kind of connects to the X-Men universe when we get Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead in here, which honestly, this movie, and I think people kind of overlook it sometimes when they talk about this movie. This movie works because of Deadpool and because of Vanessa and Wade's relationship, which is something I didn't pick up on when I was watching this for the first time in 2016. I didn't really understand why the Vanessa and Wade relationship was so beloved in this movie. And I think that also goes to the point in Deadpool 2. She kind of takes a back seat, which we'll talk about again next week, which was kind of disappointing. And I've seen Deadpool 2 more than the first one. But another thing that really works is Colossus. If you take Colossus out of this movie is not as that kind of like the attempt at being the moral compass of Deadpool, and Deadpool just suck a cock, like all this stuff like he says to Colossus.
Language
like, doesn't listen, doesn't care, doesn't give a crap, but Colossus just keeps trying. Like when he takes down Ajax, like that could have been such a kind of anticlimactic scene to me, because the whole movie is just like trying to get this guy, and at the end you just end up shooting him in the head on the ground. Like there's something kind of anticlimactic to that, but by having Colossus there, Raid, there's only 4 or 5 moments where you get the chance to be a hero. Bam!
Little JK.
Why?
I love that scene. That scene, I love that scene because Colossus is giving like that inspirational speech, and then it happens. It reminds me of the scene in the movie Deep Blue Sea where Samuel L. Jackson's giving like this inspirational speech about survival, and right before he can finish the speech, the shark just comes out and just starts eating him. It's Deep Blue Sea's underrated. Maybe that'll be another video one day. But I absolutely love Colossus. It's also more comic book accurate. I mean, Colossus is fine in the other X-Men movies, but the design for Colossus was just perfection.
Yep.
Especially on the budget they had. Like, he looks great.
Yeah, the CGI just aged remarkably well. It's clear they weren't going for photorealism, and I think that definitely paid off. If they tried to make it look, quote unquote, realistic, we would have seen the cracks in the armor. But clearly, they were going for a more cartoony-esque visual to the character, and I think that really does endear him because, again, I have not seen X-Men, the X-Men TV show, or heck, even the X-Men '97, semi reboot-ish, but it seems to harken back to that type of show and the type of corny Boy Scout heroism.
Yeah, they definitely gave Colossus the best appearance we saw him in Fox, because in the X-Men movies, he was really just used as a small side character that we got to see him transform
Run through a
once
wall.
in X-Men 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that was it. So they definitely gave him his due.
No, they treated him right. Like, especially, we'll discuss in the next video what they did for Juggernaut, because Juggernaut from X-Men: The Last Stand. I mean, do we really need to talk about that?
Don't you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
I'm the Juggernaut.
That meme is great though.
I'm the Juggernaut, but yeah, so they do a really good job at actually, and like Ryan said, they go for a more cartoony look. Like, they're not trying to make it photorealistic. So I think because of the way they design Colossus and all the CGI characters, that's why I know for a fact that within 20 years, this movie won't be dated. People will be like, oh, the effects look a little bit off, but I think that's the point, and I think that's what makes it work still.
Yeah, it kind of has that underdog feel, even with the effects, where it's like they aren't the superhero movie that people were paying attention to. At least not the studios. Like, I think the fans were really into the idea of Deadpool, especially when this was coming out, especially when that test footage leaked. But again, they tried for years to get this thing made over at Fox, and with every attempt, it was just turned down, and they had to eventually infamously leak that footage for the fans to see, to get the uproar going. But I still think that Fox looked at this as like, this is just like the nothing kind of thing. Like, we don't think that we don't get it. They just didn't understand what this movie was, and so they didn't really pay much attention to it. And then it just came out and just blew every expectation out of the water, to the fact that, yeah, we'll talk about it next week, it got a bigger budget for the sequel for sure. I do think there is something to this movie, though, that it is a little bit too inside baseball at times, which works for Deadpool and it definitely works for the fan. But I'm thinking of if I was to show somebody a superhero movie, Deadpool is not the first one that I would go to, because there's so many great meta moments. I love when Colossus takes him from the bridge. McAvoy or Stewart, who are we gonna go see? That's such a great deep cut of a joke for people that have followed this universe forever. But if I showed that to someone for the very first time, you've never seen a comic book movie, watch Deadpool, there's so many moments where it's just over the head.
That was my mom.
Yeah.
yeah, me too.
How tough can he be with a name like Francis? He got AJAX from a dish soap.
Ed Skrein is back on our screens.
Yeah.
When he popped up as AJAX, I was like, man, he looks familiar. Who is that? And then he's the villain in Rebel Moon. He's in Rebel Moon too. What do you guys think of AJAX in this movie? How do you guys think of him as a foil to Deadpool? Because I honestly think that Ed Skrein is pretty good in the movie. I don't think that he gets to shine as much because he's obviously not the focus. But as far as to he's just such an evil dick to Wade and Deadpool, and just I love the added feature of the fact that he can't feel pain. So it's no matter what Deadpool does to him, he just has this grin every time, no matter what Deadpool does. I thought Ed Skrein actually did a really great job with he's not the strongest written villain, but as far as a foil up to Wade, I thought he was pretty entertaining. What did you think, T? What did you think of AJAX in this?
So I've grown to become a big Ed Skrein fan. I think he's a fantastic villain in anything he does. Minus having the worst haircut ever in Rebel Moon. But I thought he's one of the only reasons I enjoyed any parts of either one of the Rebel Moon movies is his performance as the villain. And in this movie, I thought it was great. Like the way him and like the scenes where he's trying to mutate Wade, and like he just won't give up, and he's getting upset. He's getting more upset, and you could tell that it's getting under his skin. I just thought that was I thought it was so witty. And then their fight scene as everything's explode, that was so great. Like that was so well choreographed. I thought that was like a very underrated fight scene because they would just like he was giving them business. Like he was working them over. And I just thought that was interesting that, this is Wade's superhero story, and this villain is just a little bit better than him. A little like he was just a little bit better than him that day. And that was something else that I don't know. I haven't watched this movie in a long time, so I completely forgot a lot of the different beats. But that fight scene when he like impales them and he just leaves them there is like, man, that was insane to me. I thought that was such a great way to finish a fight scene in such a brutal fashion. And it just shows you that this movie was ready to go past that bar that you thought it had, like past any superhero bar.
It also shows that Ryan Reynolds has balls, both literally and figuratively. Because doing an entirely nude fight is, that was. I remember when I watched that back when I first watched Deadpool for the first time. That was shocking. I couldn't believe that
was for the ladies. That was for the ladies. That was for the ladies.
It was Valentine's Day.
Yes,
it's a perfect romantic comedy. Honestly, I mean, unpopular opinion. It's a perfect romance. I mean, same with Rocky. I don't care what anybody says. Rocky is a romance film. So is Deadpool.
My boyfriend told me this was a romantic comedy, but I just saw someone get skewered like kebab.
But going back to T's point, like those sequences when he is being subjected to the torture to get that mutation DNA going, they're horrific. Like some of the stuff that they show that he goes through, and even like the final one where he's put into that case where it's like you're gonna suck out all the air and make it feel like you're suffocating, but we're not gonna like kill you. You're just gonna feel that constant feeling. Like it's horrific. Like the thought of that and just like watching him go through that, and they did a really good job of again endearing you to the character of like, he's juvenile and he could be borderline annoying when he gets to be Deadpool because he just doesn't stop talking, work with the mouth, as they say. But it's because they make you care about Wade and they make you care about his relationship with Vanessa specifically. That is why he's able to just go off as Deadpool and basically do whatever he wants. I mean, even the joke, I was watching it during the rewatch, I was like, that feels like an edgy joke today when he like is going through the killing spree montage and he hits that woman. And he's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were a woman." And he's got the gun. And he's like, "Is it sexist to kill you or not kill you? The line's really blurry." And he like cocks the gun. I'm like,
"It's great.
Wow, like that's really funny, but also that's really dark."
Freaking spider monkey.
Yeah, but again, he can get away with that. He can get away with that because they've endeared you so much. They've done such a good job of making him humanized out of the suit in our eyes. I thought they did a great job with that, especially on the rewatch. I never really picked up on that before.
Yeah, I guess also something I picked up is the tonal balance. Like this film goes places. Like one moment it'll be like Deadpool sawing off his hand and make you "Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret" reference, and then it'll go. And then it'll go to like a full-blown Guantanamo Bay torture scene with him getting electrocuted and ice water and suffocated and getting diagnosed with cancer. It's like yikes. And
the tonal shifts are crazy.
Yeah, but again, I think that's the masterfulness of the editing. The way that they edited this movie is because when you're with Deadpool, when he's Deadpool in the present time, the tone is consistent with the Deadpool. But in the flashbacks, the tone is consistent with the tragedy. Really, it's a tragedy. It's a tragic story. So the tragedy has a tone to it, and the Deadpool sequences have a tone to it, and they work really well together because they're able to cut them up in that way.
To the point, back to the villain though, Francis Francis. The way he just like lords that over him through the entire movie is hilarious. But first time that I saw him was the villain was actually in Game of Thrones. I'm not like he played that brief appearance
that's
as
right.
Dario Naharis for a couple of episodes for one season that got recasted. But like Zach was saying, he's an evil dick in this movie, like not just physically but mentally as well. That one scene, Michael, I forget the side character that was kind of bonding with Wade while they were both getting tortured, and how he walks in. I forget his name, but as he walks in, he's even like, it's okay if you guys bond and stuff like that. Like he's mentally torturing these guys while physically torturing them as well. And he was the perfect antagonist for a character of Deadpool that can heal, a guy that can feel no pain. It's like their powers definitely offset each other well, and they made for a good little pairing right there. Because the biggest thing with superhero movies that a lot of people don't like is the same versus same. You know what I'm saying? The same abilities versus the same abilities kind of gets played out. So you kind of have a little same versus same, but in a different way. You have a guy that can regenerate, no problem, so he can take as much damage as possible, versus a guy that doesn't feel pain that can take as much damage as possible. So it was two characters that were definitely right for this movie.
Yeah, I guess also with regard to the same versus same, kind of reminds me of like Colossus versus Angel. Like it's clear that they are both, again, they're not quite same versus same, but they have a similar power set, super strength.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was her
That
name?
part where her thing came out, he was being all
I did not
respectful. He's like, oh.
I didn't know her as
nut
Angel.
shot.
I
did
knew
not
her.
know her name.
I knew her specifically as less angry Rosie O'Donnell. But as far as like the villain, I think he is a great villain. I mean, he's almost like the evil twin of Jason Statham in a way. But I think he has like that perfect douchebag, like villain-esque, like he's always smirking, doesn't really care. I love that entire scene where Ryan Reynolds is trying to figure out his name. He's like, is it Dennis? Is it Folsom Waltzy? He's like, his name is Ajax. He got his name from a dish soap. It's
yes,
just, it's so perfect. And then I just love, and then him always constantly saying, "What's my name?" It's like, I don't know, man. I think like you know, like you said, Zach, he's not like a really great written villain, but he's that perfect villain where it's like you just want to see him die, because not every villain has to have this crazy deep and methodical backstory. That works for some villains, but for a character like Ajax, no one cares about his backstory. He's just an asshole.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. The what's my name got me the whole time. He's like, what's my name? He's like, oh I'm gonna spell it out for you. And then he spells it out in the dead bodies. And he's like, Ajax is up top, like, oh, does he write you love notes? Like, they just had such good banter with each other. So let me ask you guys something. Is there anything that you didn't enjoy about this movie?
Some of the references can be a little obscure, even for me. I was like, again, like even some of them, again, remember how I said, like, even if you don't get the reference, it's still the way he delivers it sounds funny. Even his delivery can't make it funny. I can't remember exactly which in and of itself is a bit of a compliment to this movie. But still, there were some moments of Dead Air where I was like, how old are you again, Mr. Reynolds? But
I mean, the thing I didn't enjoy, it had nothing to do with the movie specifically, but I remember my mom took me to go see this film like a week after it came out. That's when I was wearing my Deadpool costume. She took me, my brother, my sister. My brother and sister at the time were like, I think they might have been 11, I want to say. So they were 11, and then we brought my cousins, and I told my mom, you know, what Deadpool was, and it was rated R, but she's like, okay, it doesn't seem bad. She watched the trailer, but the trailer only showed so much. And then when it went through the holiday montage scene, the worst part about that was my mom constantly doing this every time a sex scene would happen. And then when it came to National Women's Day, she was like,
"Oh yeah."
She's like great family movie.
No,
so, but other than that,
Deadpool 2 was the family one. This one was
there you go.
Yeah,
that would have been perfect. But as far as aspects, not really a lot, man. Because there's lots of movies that I can watch like a bunch of times, and I look back and I go, okay, maybe certain aspects of that film wasn't great, but it's not so much to the point where it ruins it. Very rarely are like movies that I consider perfect. Like there's like a very rare list of movies that I think are like there's nothing wrong with it. Deadpool, I don't really think there's too much like I could say that's wrong with it, because Deadpool, the character of Deadpool knows what he is. He's over the top. He's self-referential. It's basically the character of Deadpool. I mean, if you're a big Deadpool fan, then it's a perfect movie. Like there's a perfect movie. But if you're someone who's just a casual fan and you're not really a big fan of Deadpool and you might see things that you just didn't like, then that's just kind of like a subjective thing. So from my perspective, I don't really think there's anything I don't like about this film.
I think for me, it's more like it going back to being that time capsule. Because I think when it came out, it definitely it was very new. It was very different. And it was a superhero movie that was bold enough to make fun of what superhero movies were at the time. And it was bold enough to kind of get out of, like, it's really funny watching this back again and now having the knowledge that in Deadpool Wolverine he's joining the MCU, because there's so many references in this movie of like, I'm not a superhero, those guys are lame, I don't want to be a part of this, like I'm doing my own thing. And now he's a part of that thing. And I'm really curious to see how they're going to tie that all in Deadpool and Wolverine. But as far as this movie goes, I do think that it loses a little bit of its fire on rewatch because the shock value is no longer there. The jokes aren't as fresh, and there's a couple jokes in here like the movie is pretty bare bones. Like the movie as a narrative and as a story, it's pretty simplistic. Like it's not complicated. You've seen it a lot of times before, but what really works to its advantage is the jokes, and the fact that the jokes come so frequently and they come at you so fast that there's points where a joke misses me and then I watch the movie again and that joke hits me and it didn't before, because they just come like rapid fire so fast. And there's also jokes in here like I didn't see RoboCop the first time I watched this, and now I've seen RoboCop. So when he's getting dragged on the bridge, dead or alive, you're coming with me, I was like, I got that. I now understand that joke. So
I understood the reference.
I understood that reference. So
I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah, so there's advantages to it having so many jokes, but at the same time, sometimes the jokes they don't work. Sometimes like what you were talking about before, where he's like, "Wait a minute, did I leave the stove on?" Like to me, that's a weak joke. That's just kind of like we need a joke here, so let's just throw this in. Like there's moments like that in the movie where it's like the joke's not as strong, it doesn't hit as hard for me, but it's just a fun ride, and that's what the movie sets out to be, and I think it succeeds at that.
The one thing, honestly, that I didn't like about this movie was the fact that Colossus was in it. I was not a fan of that. Like, I just...
Oh, really?
I just thought he was shoehorned in. There was, like, the only X-Men character that they could license to get in this movie, and they did, and I just thought, like, the scene where he's kicking him and he hits him and breaks all of his bones, that's hilarious. Like, that is, like... Other than that, I just yeah, like that scene made it almost worth it for me. But I just like I don't know. I just wasn't a big fan of the character. I know why he was there. It just didn't do it for me.
Do you guys see any way, or do you guys think that this will tie in to Deadpool and Wolverine anyways? Because honestly, after rewatching this movie and watching the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, there is that like sequence that kind of looks like they're on the same aircraft carrier as at the end of this movie. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. I think AJAX is in Deadpool and Wolverine. I think Ed Skrein.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, it's not bold, but it's a prediction.
Yeah. Like,
I'm hoping to see everybody in this movie. I want to see Wesley Snipes.
Need to be in there.
I want to see Thomas Jane back as the Punisher. Just come back for the heck of it, because I love that Punisher movie. I just want everybody.
But specifically for this movie, do you see any way that this movie ties into Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah, I want to see the side characters. I want to obviously we saw, the one scene in the trailer where they're all like throwing a birthday party for Wade.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling like that might be the only time that we get to see all these side characters where, we'll see Dopender. We'll see like, some of the old, some of the side characters from this movie. I think that's probably how they'll end up tying it in before he ultimately goes to the MCU.
I can't wait to see Yukio again. I loved Yukio. Hi, Wade.
And we haven't talked about Negasonic Teenage Warhead. How
great.
Love your name. Can we change names? Like
that's the coolest name ever.
That was a nice little X-Men side character to bring in.
She's a great character. There's a couple times where she smiles, but she reminds me of a lot of girls that I knew back in high school, very just like always chewing gum, don't really care, don't want to be here. I went through my emo phase when I was like 14, so I was kind of the same way. So I was like, you know what? I relate to her. She's a very relatable character, minus the superpowers and shaving off the head and wearing black lipstick. I didn't really go that far.
Oh,
But
you weren't into like the emo stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
she's an attractive lady. She's
no, I was definitely in my emo phase. Like I had my long hair, and then within 2 weeks, boom, just changed my phase just like that. But she was like I said, she is a character that I kind of related to. There's so many times where I'm just like, I don't want to be here, but I have to. It's almost like Colossus is like her father, and he's like forcing her to like go like sweetie, I know you don't want to see your family, but you have to go see your family. She's just like, okay. It's like that's how I kind of think of her character as.
They even referenced that a little bit, talking about on that bridge scene where she's like, "You got me in a box here." Like, what is it? Is it a snarky comment or yeah? So they definitely went into the teenage trope with her.
I think I feel similar to how T feels about Colossus with her, because to me, she kind of is just like a one-note joke for me in the movie. Like she doesn't really stand out. Like I think the name being so bizarre, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, is kind of like the one joke they have, and then the fact that she's just like this angsty teen character up against Deadpool's juvenile snarkiness. Like I don't know, it gets kind of tired for me. She never really sticks out to me in my mind when I watch the movie.
Yeah, she gets better in the sequel too, I think. Just that again, that's kind of all I want.
Well, her role is very diminished in the sequel.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
A little bit.
I mean, Deadpool too, and she gets a little more screen time. I mean, she yells again. One of my favorite lines where it's like, "I'm a new X-Men." It's like, and she yells out, "Trainee!"
We'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about it next week. So before we go, let's give our overall thoughts on the movie. Let's start with you, Ace. What's your recommendation for Deadpool and why?
I give this a strong recommend. It's something that, as a comic fan, it's a movie that you need to see, in my opinion. It set the tone in such a different way, like we had previously alluded to throughout this entire stream, you know what I'm saying? And with all these big superhero movies, it really felt different, and it stood on its own in a way that we haven't seen. And hopefully, it set the precedence for, other comic movies going forward. So I would definitely give this a strong recommend.
I'm gonna follow that. I give it a strong recommend. I will say, after watching this movie, though, it kind of made me afraid for Deadpool and Wolverine with how small of a scale this movie was. I think we're gonna get or people expecting this large scale, like Avengers level, Endgame level movie, and I don't think we're gonna get that. I don't think we got that with 1 or 2. But now you have new fans who are just so excited that Wolverine's in it, that they're expecting something bigger than what I think we're ultimately going to get. I think Ryan Reynolds understands the character. I think he understands. He understood it in this movie. This movie didn't have to be extremely grand to be great. Like it understood simplicity. It also probably has like a 3 times its budget, or probably 4 or 5 times its budget for Deadpool and Wolverine. But I love the fact that it was like, it made fun of the fact that his budget was so small. And I think people are missing that point of, I think that's what Deadpool is. It's not grand, it's small, but it's compact, it's funny, and that's what makes it special.
I give this a strong recommend. And if it was on my YouTube channel, I would give it an A+. I think this is a perfect movie, and I know that's a lot to really give because it's very easy to just say a movie's a 10 out of 10. But this is, like I said, one of the few superhero movies that I don't have a problem with, like Deadpool, the Batman with Robert Pattinson, Superman with Christopher Reeves. I mean, those are superhero movies that are flawless in my mind. And Deadpool, like I said, definitely in the top 5.
I give it a solid recommend. Not every joke works, and perhaps again, I appreciate how the flashback sequence keeps the pacing good, and you get to engage with the character. I don't know. It just, again, it just feels like it never like it fully gets to breathe in the Deadpool glory for up until the 3rd act. But yeah, otherwise, it's a solid recommend from me. It's a great cast all around.
Yeah, and I'm going to follow Ryan on that. I'm going to give it a solid recommend. Obviously, we've sat here, we've praised it, we all like it, so there's no question as to whether or not I like the movie. But I do think that it's reliant on if you were around at that time, you're going to get a lot more enjoyment out of this movie because it is the jokes about Green Lantern. If you were around for Ryan Reynolds' kind of career crash when he did Green Lantern, don't make the super suit green or animated. Like those kind of jokes work when you were there at the time. The X-Men Origins Wolverine figurine that he has in his room, like that hits you because you're there at the time. McAvoy or Stewart, you're there at the time. There's some jokes in here that dated specifically for. There's always that talk about movies being made for the fans, and this is definitely one that you can say is made for the Deadpool and the superhero genre fans at the time. And I do think that there's a little bit of fire that it loses when you weren't there at the time. You don't get those jokes that go over your head. I do think the humor is both a double-edged. I think it's a double-edged sword for this movie. It's way more of a positive than it is a negative for me. But I do think that it brings it down a little bit from a strong recommend to a solid recommend, especially with the rewatchability. I do think it loses a little bit of its fire on a rewatch. So I really like the movie, enjoy it to bits, but it's going to be a solid recommend for me.
Let's not forget George Michael. That was one thing we forgot to mention. George Michael, Wham. I can't listen to Careless Whistle without thinking of Deadpool.
Oh,
it's
that's the only thing that's pulling out tonight.
Absolutely.
I'm interested to see too, like how they're gonna incorporate, because there was a lot of Wolverine references in this movie as well.
Yeah,
like a lot of Hugh Jackman. I'm interested to see if they go that route in Deadpool Wolverine. If they're gonna be like, okay, if that's another way that it ties into there. If they're like, okay, hey Hugh, like if you knew him the whole time, like you got to, because there was a lot of those references in here.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, guys, that was Deadpool. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You can also join the conversation down in the comments. Let us know what you think of Deadpool. We'll be back next week to talk about Deadpool 2. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for being members and talking about Deadpool. We'll see you again next week for Deadpool 2. Take care.
Let's do it.